awesome. It was like,
Unbelievable.
it was kind of like you. It's like, look, I'm only going to be interviewing this person once. I'm asking everything.
Yeah,
And
he went for it.
He certainly did. He went for it. And Dave answered them. I mean, I was like, wow, that was one of the more upfront and, I don't want to say brutal, but like frank. Like, he just came out and asked. And I was like, wow, this guy's got cojones.
Unbelievable. That's for sure. Letter number 20 comes from Kevin Lowe. And he's in Barcelona, Dave. Wow. Again, the most international mailbag ever. And he says here, I love the podcast. I've been listening since day one. The recent podcast with Greg Runoff was immense, and I really enjoyed the perspective of the Van Halen story through the prism of Ted Templeman's career. It's so much interesting stuff. And the question for the mailbag is about the event regarding Dave's firing of Ted just before the Skyscraper album. I never heard this story before, and in truth, it really didn't paint Dave in a good light. Any thoughts about his motives? What would be the benefit of firing Ted? Imagine how awesome Skyscraper would have been if Ted had been at the controls. Thanks, guys. Kevin Lowe from sunny Barcelona. Well, I tell you, why did this go on? Well, I think that maybe David Lee Roth wanted to go in a different direction with Skyscraper. I think he knew straight out that Ted would never have gone for the direction he was heading in, which is a more poppy dance direction. Plus, I think he had Steve Vai on his team who basically produced the album. A lot of people know that from behind the scenes. It also might have been a financial thing. Ted gets a pretty mighty cut when he produces. Maybe he was also a little pissed that 5150 did better and maybe he wanted to take it out on somebody. I have no idea. What do you think, Dave?
Yeah, I'm not sure what to think about that whole thing.
It was very odd, very strange part of the book. Very strange.
Yeah,
definitely. It was dark. It was like a dark moment in the book.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's also
well, sometimes, he does go dark sometimes, Sometimes
he does. He does.
You know?
Yeah.
So,
very strange. Letter number 21 comes from the links, Dave. I don't even know who this person is, but it's...
he didn't leave a name.
No, he didn't leave a name.
Sorry.
So it's just KYDTSOOS said, I discovered the Dave and Dave Unchained podcast over a month ago, and I am up to episode number 38 so far, and should be caught up pretty current to date soon. If anyone on here is not subscribed, let me just say that this is a must-listen for all Van Halen fans. They are fantastic interviewers and good at communicating. I don't know how they do it, but so far I have found nearly every episode to be highly entertaining and fascinating. You really get the inside scoop from many different perspectives. The episodes are quite long, but I like to listen in chunks over the course of 1 to 3 days, and that works for me. I like all the eras of Van Halen, and I appreciate how Dave and Dave are always respectful for all the members, even when discussing the things about Van Halen that most of us find annoying, ridiculous, hilarious, and cheesy. And with that, and since this is Dave's thread to begin with, Dave, thank you guys. Well, thank you very much. I don't know your name, but I appreciate compliment on the links, and it was a beautiful endorsement. And if you get a chance to write us a review on iTunes, I'd appreciate that. And Dave, what do you think of that?
Yes, thank you very much for the kind words. We appreciate it.
Absolutely. Keep the ball rolling, and it will make you guys fully engaged with all the VH insanity. That's for sure. Letter number 22, keeping Dave's eyes open. We're almost at the finish line. He can feel it. I know he's getting excited. So here we are. Letter number 22 comes from another guy. Doesn't give his name. Motherfucker. He doesn't give us the last name. Steve from Louisville. Okay. Hey, Dave and Dave. Every time I hear Romeo Delight commercial, it says songs not even played live by the band. Makes me wonder what songs from the original 6 albums they never played live. What are your thoughts on why they didn't play them? Love the show. Really well done. Steve from Louisville. P.S. I remember a live video of Unchained with an extended intro. Love that version. Did Dave miss his cue? P.P.S. If Van Halen finally opens the vault and finally releases a live album, what bootleg would you like to pick? All right. So, well, what can I tell you? Romeo Delight plays Top Jimmy, which the band never played live. They play Could This Be Magic, which I don't think the band played live. And they actually played Me Wise Magic for us. at one of our Dave and Dave Unchained bashes, and I might have been the first one, but you could double check it. It's on recorded live on our podcast, so you can check that out. In terms of Dave missing his cue, yeah, I think he missed his cue and then went around and looped it around and finally got into the song. That's for sure. In terms of the bootleg, I know, Dave, you always said the South American tour from 82 you'd like to see the release, right?
Yeah, 83. Yep.
Oh,
83.
Yep. I'm sorry, 83. Right. So, letter number 23 comes from Dave Ferris, and he says, "Hey guys, I always enjoy the podcast, and it definitely gets my mind moving on everything Van Halen. Lately, I've been going through the old Van Halen interviews with Sammy and the band from 1986 to 1988, and it seems the band used to champion the fact that Sammy played guitar, and that gave Eddie the freedom to play keyboards. Obviously, I prefer to see Ed play guitar. I know Sam played guitar while Ed was on keyboards on the 5150 and OU812 tours, but when the Fuck tour came around, Ed was playing guitar while you could hear keyboards playing. I heard that Alan Fitzgerald, Sammy's former Montrose bandmate, and from Night Ranger, played off the stage. I also read that Alex and Ed would play together pre-show and Ed would record the keyboard parts. Either way, I'm wondering if anybody really knows why we didn't see Sam playing guitar while Ed was on keyboards. Was there a band decision that Sammy was voted against? I've never heard a solid story on that, considering how much that was talked about in 1986. Well, I think it was simpler and easier transitioning from song to song as they got into the Fuck tour. So you got to realize, by the time they got to the Fuck tour, they're doing Jump. They're doing Right Now. They're doing When It's Love. They're doing Why Can't This Be Love. There's so many keyboard songs that it was too much for Ed to transition, and I believe this was simpler. So no, I believe they used Fitz behind the curtain on the Fuck tour and on the Balance tour. And I think they also used Fitz on the 2004 tour. And then I think Ed recorded the keyboards during the 2007 tour on. I mean, that's roughly what I know. What do you know, Dave?
I think Ed may have recorded them, but I mean, Fitz was in charge of making sure the sample went off.
Oh, is that what it was?
And things like, well, when they were doing, like, it's hard to know whether Fitz was actually playing them in the background. Right. Was he setting off a sample? Like, I've never seen, or I don't recall seeing a straight answer on that. There were a lot more keyboard songs by the time of the For Unlawful Carnal Knowledge tour.
Yeah.
But honestly, I think part of it was just laziness and acceptance that a lot of bands were doing this. For me as a fan, I find it frustrating that why Ed didn't play the keyboards and just have Sam play the guitar. I mean, we all know he can play guitar. So have him play the guitar on the songs. I don't understand what that problem was. Unless Ed just wanted to play guitar and was like, you know what, I don't want to play keyboards live, so this is how we're going to do it. And that was that.
Yep, absolutely.
But, I'm always one, I feel that they should have at least had a keyboardist on stage, somebody else playing. I mean, look, if you can have Fitz in the background anyway, they just have somebody on stage doing it. I mean, I don't understand, like, what's the mystique? I mean, I just don't.
Yeah, you know. It's a little weird, that's for sure. I thought it was way better when Ed played live keyboards. I thought it was a totally cool moment, and I don't know.
Yeah.
It gets crazy. Regarding number 24, letter number 24 comes from Eric Torbeck. And he says, "What's up, guys? I got two questions for you. What really happened with Dave and Steve Vai in 1989? Both have spoken nicely about the split and the old musical differences reason, but never seemed to make sense to me, especially considering both were so involved in Dave's solo records. One rumor at the time was Dave wanted to take the rest of 1989 off, and Steve thought he could do Whitesnake gig during the downtime, and Dave was apparently furious about that. I know you've spoken with Steve, and not sure if he really ever said anything other than the regular musical differences." That's number one. Well, let's address that. Okay, well, I did speak with Steve. He's been on the podcast like several times. We have talked about it on there. He did say that it was really, well, first of all, Steve's a real gentleman. He doesn't talk trash, but he was pretty frank. And he said that he had kind of had enough at that point. I think, really, to be honest with you, and after I have been with Steve, I've interviewed him multiple times, I got the feeling that the whole band vibe that was going on during the Eat 'em and Smile days was over. And apparently Dave was on a little bit of a head trip. Steve didn't say this, but just from what I have gathered, I've interviewed Billy multiple times, Billy Sheehan. I've interviewed Steve Vai multiple times. And the guys were treated more like hired hands at this point, and the Skyscraper album was very laborious to put together. I think the firing of Billy Sheehan really crushed Steve Vai, and I think Steve was signed on to do the tour and everything, and then he fulfilled his obligation and moved on. He also really was itching to launch his solo career. His album Passion and Warfare came out after that, and that was a landmark record for him, and he put that out and was also able to jump on board Whitesnake because Whitesnake gave him sort of extra prominence for his album. They even gave him a solo spot in the Whitesnake live show where he actually played some Passion and Warfare stuff. So I think it was a Whitesnake gig was a great prominence for him. It was a way to promote his solo album. It was a great paying gig. And, who's going to pass that up? He's loved working with David Coverdale, who apparently, was a lot easier to work with than Roth. But I think the Roth thing got a little weird. I think he had enough. What do you think, Dave?
Yeah, I think he was just done.
Yeah.
I think he was just done. I think Roth was heading in a direction, and Steve was like, you know what? I learned a lot from this guy. I got lots of exposure. I'm ready to work on my solo album. And then the Whitesnake gig came along. And I think he was like, well, I can't pass this up.
Probably.
Because maybe Steve is thinking, you know what? I'll do the Whitesnake gig. It'll pay the bills.
Yeah.
I could do my solo album. But but his solo album did pretty damn well.
Oh, it's
right?
It's legendary. It's legendary.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I know it's legendary in terms of a performance on the album, but in terms of sales-wise, it did well, too.
No, yeah.
I mean, this was not right after. I shouldn't say it's right after, but this is after Joe Satriani's album had
2 years after. 2 years after. Yeah.
Okay.
3 years after. 3 years after.
Okay. So here's Steve puts out his solo album. It's doing well while he's doing the Whitesnake thing. So, look at that. And to your point, during the Whitesnake tour, he got to do a solo song during the tour. I mean, that's normally unheard of.
Yeah.
I mean, especially for Coverdale. Because Coverdale's a lot of things, but he'll let you know who's in charge. I mean, it's a Whitesnake show. So the fact that Steve got to do a solo song speaks volumes. But to answer the original question, I just think he was done. Like you said, Bill had left the band. The music style was changing. I think David Lee Roth had said something to the effect of, God bless Steve, but he was more interested in making, I forget exactly what he said, but a different kind of music.
Right.
Music that Roth really wasn't into, and it was just time for Steve to move on.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, Eric talks about here, how the heck did Mikey stay with the band when Sammy left in 1996? From all the new history we've learned recently, it's clear Ed was not a fan of Mikey either as a bass player or a person, and that didn't improve without Sam. Looking back on it now, I can't imagine how he stayed professional and continued on working with him. Well, it's very simple. Michael Anthony hung in as long as he could because Van Halen is the gravy train. And he was the original bassist, and he would stick with the band to the end until he literally got forced out. Right, Dave?
Right. I mean, he was not going to get any better of a gig.
That's right. That's true.
Even making less than he was making before.
Right. It's still better than what he had. And he also said, I appreciate the compliments, but I am not Eric from Vegas. I hope to hang with you guys at the Circle show in Jersey this August, but hopefully we can do that next year. Okay, wow, I can't believe I mixed up the Erics there. I apologize to the other Eric that we know. Oh my God, I'm so sorry about that. Okay, so letter number 25 comes from Brad Snitzer, and he says, I just finished your most recent podcast, and I have a friend who is one of the promoters for the Sam and Dave tour and took me to the Kansas City show. It was the first time I met Sammy and got to attend the sound check. Michael Anthony happened to be standing in front of me, so I took a picture. David had a horrible show, and I was attending his backstage party after the concert, but Dave was nowhere to be found. And it was an incredible experience, to say the least. Brad Snitzer. Well, yes, the Sam and Dave tour was great. Could have been unbelievable. What do you think, Dave?
Coulda, woulda, shoulda.
That's right.
But unfortunately wasn't a.
That's right. And we are on to the last letter of the night, Dave's favorite part of the podcast. It is letter number 26, and it comes from, oh my God, he's back. It is the fourth Dave Moses, and he says, you keep Van Halen alive and kicking and always renew my interest and curiosity in my favorite band with such interesting, professional, informative way. Thank you so much for that. Great podcast on the Sam and Dave tour. I did watch The Rage Beyond the Stage as per your suggestion, and it was great. I actually have more respect for Dave now and see him as the only